surfaced at filling stations across the country, and Nigerians were quite apprehensive of the development. Consequently, the Nigerian National Petroleum Limited disclosed that adulterated petrol imported into the country from Belgium was the cause. But some vehicle owners are already bearing the brunt, with the House of Representatives resolving to probe into the matter. And the Senate is seeking to bring respite to distressed Nigerian retirees through a bill that will amend the 2014 Pensions Reform Act. The Central Bank of Nigeria, along with the Bankers Committee, have taken a firm position to defend the local currency. These are the highlights of today's episode of Business 24. Export tips and capital market review segments are sure part of the package. I'm Shikeola Ipenaye. Welcome to the program. The House of Representatives has adopted a resolution to investigate the recent importation, release and sale of adulterated petrol across the country. House Chief Whip Mohammed Tahir Mongono raised the issue as a matter of urgent public importance during plenary.
It has national security implications. Investigations should also be done thoroughly so that the culprits should be brought to book.
To import petroleum products has become a war that we have to win. Why?
It means the system is completely compromised. There are almost 11 checks before a petroleum product get to the filling station.
The oil was imported from Belgium. If we know the source of the oil and we know the company that brought it in, what are we waiting for? My question now and my argument is that what has NNPC done in the last 72 hours?
In the meantime, President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered that producers and providers of consumable products be held accountable for substandard services or products sold by them. The president has also given directives to the relevant government agencies to take every step in line with the law of the country to ensure respect and protection of consumers against market abuses and social injustice. In a reaction to the issue of petroleum products shortages linked to the supply of contaminated products of foreign origin into Nigerian markets, President Buhari said the protection of consumer interests is a priority of the administration, of the present administration, and is ready to take all necessary measures to protect consumers from hazardous products, loss or injuries from the consumption of substandard goods. The president directed that in line with the law, service providers must make full disclosure of relevant information with respect to the consumption of their products, and that dissatisfied consumers are entitled to a proper redress of their complaints. Now to the main issue of the day. Nigerian Senate moves to amend the Pensions Reform Act 2014 to make pensioners the real beneficiaries of their savings in retirement. This, no doubt, is good news ahead for Nigerian retirees. Let's join Kunle Adeyeye, who will give more insight in this report.
Enacted by the National Assembly, the 2004 Pensions Act gave birth to contributory pension scheme in Nigeria for employees in the public and private sector with the aim of ensuring that every person who worked in either the public service of the Federation, Federal Capital Territory, or private sector receives the retirement benefits as and when due, assist improvident individuals by ensuring that they save in order to cater for their livelihood during old age. Establish a uniform set of rules, regulations, and standards for the administration and payments of retirement benefits for the public service of the Federation, Federal Capital Territory, and the private sector, which was enacted to continue to regulate and administer uniform pension contributory scheme for both public and private sectors in Nigeria, with some improvements over the 2004 acts. Nevertheless, with some issues arising from the provisions of the Act, especially as regards the benefits due to contributor as at retirement, which provides for 25% of the pensioner's contribution to be given immediately upon retirement. The Senate deems it fit to review the Pension Reforms Act 2014 with the view to increase the retirement benefits due to retirees or disengaged worker from 25 to 75% immediately upon retirement and criminalize undue delay in payment of the accrued benefits.
If there's going to be an amendment, I think I would have presumed that the Senate should focus more on pensioners, even before they become pensioners, should have the capacity and the ability to invest their contribution from both themselves and then their employers into ventures that are outside the statutory ventures that already stipulated by law. They're already stipulated by the law. So see the next of kin, having access to the pension, the pension when someone dies is not that important as far as I'm concerned. So my view as an investment expert is, let's look at how people, while they are still contributing, because these are funds that stay, idle funds that stay for over 30, 35 years while you're in service. After 10 years, can you actually invest in a more viable transaction, a more risky transaction, and after the 10 years, that window closes, then the rest becomes like a continuous contributory pension, which you can draw after when you have retired. Now, these things have happened. These are things that they used in during the privatization exercise in countries like Chile, where people began to assess their pension funds, began to have access to those contributions, their pension contributions, early enough, even while in service, to invest in more risky transactions and they invested them in strategic assets that were owned by government.
The bill seeks to amend some sections of the Pension Reform Act of the country, prominent being Section 1 of the Pension Reform Act 2014, which states that ensure that every person who worked in either the public service of the Federation, Federal Capital Territory, state and local government, or the private sector receives his retirement benefits as and when due, and replaces it with receives at least 75% of his retirement benefits immediately upon retirement, disengages or is disengaged. The bill, after scaling the second reading, was referred by the Senate President Ahmed Lawan to the Committee on Establishments and Public Service Matters. Kunle Adeyeye for Business 24.
Alika Okpanachi-Arowa was in town to seek opinion of workers, especially civil servants, on this move by the Senate to amend the Pensions Act.
Pension fund was created to reduce the difficulty that people were having. And so in that light, there was adequate arrangement to have a contributory pension. The staff will contribute while the federal government will contribute. It was not a one-thing arrangement again, such that at the end of your service, you can have a large chunk of your money paid to you. But it's not so in practice. We understood that there were directors who were earning above 200, 250 at the end of their service year were placed on 60, 50,000 naira, and this caused a lot of trouble to them. Some of them suffered high blood pressure, and within a jiffy, they passed on. And so, if it has come as a bill to the Senate or to the House of Representatives, it's a good thing for the civil service and the civil servant in particular, such that at the end of their service, they could have over 60% of their contributory pension paid to them, and then they could go into private businesses or other things that could keep them longer than reducing their life by not paying them. Who are the people enjoying this pension contribution? They are the PFAs, buying exotic cars, having exotic offices here and there, living large, whereas the people contributing this money are suffering untold hardship, not having access to their money. They made arrangement that it should be 50 years before you can access it, and then even after your retirement, you still cannot have good access to your money. It's very wrong.
Is it a crime to serve your country for 60 years or 35 years? In fact, it has been so ridiculous. Personally, I retired about 8 years ago, and I can tell you the way and manner we have been treated is not the best. How can you tie the money I've worked for over the years down and be giving me peanuts? Could you imagine? How can it even be hard for somebody who has worked, and you now tell that person that cannot manage whatever could be entitlement in terms of pension? If my money is given to me outrightly, I know the type of investment that I can take care of, that could take care of my old age, and not somebody from somewhere will come up and put under this kind of hardship we are undergoing. In fact, if any patient that is under the new program is telling you that is fine with them, it's a lie. The ideal thing is that we have worked, whatever is our due in terms of gratuity and pension should be given us on as we are retiring, and we can take care of it.
The aim of the commission is nice, but the follow-up is poor. The reason is, if I retire, for instance, and you gather money up to 10 million naira, for instance, it should be that 70% of that money be given to you at the initial takeoff. For instance, if they gather 10 million from you, 7 million should be given to you after retirement, so you can start the business and stabilize your life. Because after retirement, you obviously fall back to nothing. The only hope of retirees is that pension that you fall back on, that was gathered over time for you to retire. So if you retire, 70% should be given to you so that you can start up your life with. That's the best way you should go.
The way the PFAs are doing it is not the best. That it should be that on your retiring from active service, you should be given 70%. That you can do one business to another business. But by the way that they are giving 1% or 2% is what is killing the retirees so quick. So I think that the PFAs themselves are contributing to a quick death of the retirees. So PENCON should do something about it. Because me too, I'm still working. But sometimes pension called me and say, I have this, my age, they want to put this into insurance. I said no. When I come out, I want all the money. One of them told me it's not possible, and I was highly infuriated. So I think one of the things PENCON should do is to regulate the act of the PFAs to make sure that retirees get their money in bulk. Thank you so much.
Well, I think considering the life expectancy in Nigeria, which is barely around 50 to 54, this is short. At least 50% of whatever savings that is kept for an individual at retirement should be given. But I will encourage that pre-retirement, such individuals should be engaged with lectures and aids on how to develop themselves after retirement, such that Once it's remaining 2 to 3 years, they will begin to make some little investments so that once they are given this money, they will put to it. Otherwise, by the time we give them this token of 1 million, a lot of people don't get prepared for retirement, and that is when they want to build. You imagine you invest 1 million naira in the building and he cannot complete it. That means it's neither moving forward nor coming back, it's just static. And at that point, it is at that age people begin to have chronic ailments like cancers, particularly for men, prostate, cervical cancer for men. And these are ailments that require a lot of money. So at that you see that people die from such. And by the time you begin to give to the family stipends, you see that they are not able to gather to even manage themselves. To feed is a problem. So I think it's a worthy venture that we all support, having looked at it from a general perspective.
For those waiting on Nigeria to float the naira, they will have to wait much longer as the Central Bank of Nigeria, along with the Bankers Committee, take firm position to defend the local currency. Governor of the CBN, Godwin Emefiele, disclosed this in Abuja as he reeled 5 thematic areas around the new policies designed to boost non-oil exports and draw in $200 billion in 5 years.
I'm mindful that this goal itself may appear unattainable to some, but we are resolute and determined that we can achieve it. Many countries that are much less endowed than Nigeria are doing the same. We are saying for them to process them into semi-finished or finished goods that where there has been a lot of value addition that would have created employment, that we will fund their obligation. We will fund them to acquire plants and equipment. We will fund them to open factories for 10 years loan and 2 years moratorium.
The African Continental Free Trade Area AfCFTA Secretariat and African Export-Import Bank Afrexim Bank have signed an agreement for the management of the base fund of the AfCFTA Adjustment Fund. The fund, estimated at $10 billion over the next 5 to 10 years, will support African countries and the private sector to effectively participate in the new trading environment established under the AfCFTA. With the agreement between the Secretariat of the African Continental Free Trade Area and the African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank, over management of the base fund of the AfCFTA Adjustment Fund, continental trade will definitely be on the rise. Are you an exporter or an aspiring exporter? Just listen to these export tips.
So today I'll be talking about Incoterms. Incoterm means international commercial terms. If you're someone or a company that is interested in venturing into export or international trade, you need to understand Incoterms. That's absolutely necessary because they're terminologies that, as a buyer or a seller, of course, in that process, there's a buyer and there's a seller. So Incoterms dictates the relationship between the buyer and the seller. It talks about the tasks, the cost, the risks that are associated in that particular transaction. Who is protected? Who does what? Who pays for what? If there's a damage, who covers it? So it's important that you understand Incoterms. And the latest Incoterm is called Incoterm 2020. It was published by the International Chamber of Commerce. So you could actually go online and find, look for Incoterms 2020. That's actually the latest. It talks about the relationship between the buyer and the seller. Now look at this. If you're entering a business transaction, you also need to understand, are your risks covered? Who covers it? Who covers the cost of transportation? Who covers the cost of insurance? Who covers the cost of duties? What's my role in this transaction? Very important. You know why it's important as well? because you're entering a contract. When you're entering an export contract with your buyer, you are the seller, you have a buyer. If you're entering a contract, then you have to base them on certain Incoterms. And we both agree that this is how it's going to be. Very important. Now, let me give you an example of an Incoterm. We have free on board, for example. Free on board is an Incoterm that is used for sea and inland waterway transportation. Now, in this case, the seller delivers the goods on board the vessel that's going to transport the goods. When the seller delivers it on that vessel, as stipulated by the buyer, because the buyer is saying, I want you to use this particular vessel. So you obey that to that very point. And it tells you, this is my port of shipment. You've agreed on that. Now, if the seller gets the products on top of the vessel at that port of shipment, that free on board tells you that the risk of that transportation from that point forward is borne by the buyer. So that's an Incoterm. And we have several Incoterms. And like I said earlier, you need to study them to understand what kind of contracts exist.
It's been a mixed trend in the capital market as the market opened on a negative trend but rebound midweek. Let's join Professor Uche Waleke for the capital market review.
The week was actually mixed, even though on a week-on-week basis, the all-share index depreciated by 0.17%. It started actually on a sluggish note. On Monday, you recall, the equities segment of the market lost about 0.16%, and the negative sentiment continued the following day on Tuesday. But we saw a reversal of that on Wednesday when the market picked up. It also stayed positive on Thursday, only to end on a negative note on Friday by as much as 0.18%. So you would say overall it was a case of profit taking the early days of the week. And of course, on the back of the strong gains we saw the previous week. The previous week, the markets on a week-on-week basis, gained a 2.31%. So you would expect that, some investors would, sell some stocks at the beginning of the week, which was what happened. So we saw profit taken on Monday and on Tuesday. And Wednesday and Thursday, if you like, the bulls returned with bargain hunting, only for the week now to close on a negative note. But by and large, I would say the market is still relatively strong. Year-to-date return is still above 10%. It's I think about 10.4%. Year-to-date return. The index is still above 47,000 points, still above that mark. And going into next week, I also want to project that the mixed performance, would continue. I don't see any major trigger or any major thing that will upset the current market performance. If anything, I want to believe that the market will continue to grow stronger. We're expecting that next week the National Bureau of Statistics will release inflation figure for the month of January, and I don't see that significantly affecting the stock prices next week. The bond segment of the market, yes, we also saw the FGN savings bond, offer, during the week. So I would say by and large, the week has been a mixed one, and this is also something we should expect, going forward, at least for the rest of the month, given that the external factor that affects, our equities performance in particular, talking about oil price, international oil price is still strong at over $90 per barrel. So I don't expect that there will be any major shift in the trend. When I say trend, of course, I mean the upward trend we are witnessing at the moment.
That's Business 24 for this week. I am Shikiola Ikmenaye. Thank you very much for being part of it. Keep doing the right thing and always talk business. Bye for now.